Mark had never been one to believe in the strange and unknown, at least not until that night. He was just a regular guy, living on a spaceship in the middle of an intergalactic mission. The stars outside the window twinkled like diamonds, casting a soft glow over the room as he sat on his bed, scrolling through his phone. It was late, far past midnight, and everyone else was asleep. He could already feel the quiet hum of the ship rocking him into a peaceful sleep. But that was when it happened. A loud thud came from the door, sharp and sudden. Mark jolted upright, his heart racing. "What the hell?" he muttered to himself, blinking rapidly, wondering if he was still dreaming. Before he could even make sense of it, the door swung open with a loud screech, revealing a figure standing in the doorway. Mark froze, eyes wide. It wasn't a person he recognized. She was tall, taller than most humans, her skin a strange, glowing silver, almost ethereal in the dim light. Her long black hair moved as if it were underwater, flowing around her face with each step she took. But it was her eyes that caught Mark off guard. They weren't just eyes, they were violet, glowing like twin stars in the dark. She didn't seem to notice his shock. Instead, her lips curled into a playful smile as she stepped into the room with an almost regal grace. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest tighten. But there was something else about her, something that made his heart beat faster, a feeling of mystery, of danger. "Human," she said in a voice that was smooth, almost melodic, like a song in a language he didn't understand. Her words cut through the air, making his skin prickle. "Can you destroy me?" Mark blinked, not entirely sure if he was hearing things correctly. He rubbed his eyes just in case he was still dreaming. But no, she was still standing there, gazing at him with a mischievous glint in her violet eyes. She didn't seem like a threat. In fact, she seemed intrigued. No, not intrigued, challenging. What?" Mark asked, his voice coming out a little more breathless than he intended. "I said," she repeated, her tone not unkind but firm, "can you destroy me?" Mark stood up, trying to act like he wasn't completely thrown off by her sudden appearance. "Destroy you? Like? Break you? In what sense?" His brain scrambled for something to say that didn't sound completely ridiculous. The alien, because at this point that's the only word Mark could think of, tilted her head slightly, studying him. "In the way humans do best," she said. "With your unpredictability, your emotions. Can you make me fall? Can you break my pride, my control?" Mark's mouth went dry. This was too much. Was this some kind of test? A game? His heart was pounding now, his mind racing to keep up with the situation. "I'm sorry, but I don't know if I can do that," he said, a little uncertain. "I mean, I'm not exactly an expert in destroying things." The alien's smile widened, revealing a set of sharp, perfect teeth. "Oh, I'm certain you're capable of far more than you know. Your kind is full of surprises. I've been told that humans are special." Her eyes gleamed with amusement, as if she were savoring some inside joke. Mark felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. He was pretty sure she was messing with him, but her gaze was intense, and the way she spoke. It wasn't like anything he had ever heard. There was something almost magnetic about her, something that made him want to rise to her challenge, even though he had no idea what she meant by it. "Well, I can't exactly destroy you if I don't know what I'm dealing with," Mark said, leaning against his desk. "I'm not just some button pusher. I mean, how can I break you when you've got that whole alien goddess thing going on?" He grinned, trying to keep the mood light, even as his heart raced in his chest. The alien laughed, a sound like music. It wasn't the cold, distant laugh of someone who thought of humans as lesser beings. No, this laugh was warm, inviting. She looked at him as though she was seeing him for the first time. "You have a strange sense of humor, human," she said, her voice now softer. "I was told you might be amusing, but I see now that you are more than that." Mark's grin widened at the compliment. "Yeah, we humans can be pretty amusing, especially when we're caught off guard." The alien stepped closer, closing the distance between them. She was even taller than he had imagined, and for the first time Mark felt a little small under her gaze. It wasn't intimidating, though. It was like she was studying him, trying to understand what made him tick. "So human," she said, her voice lowering to a whisper, "are you ready for the challenge? Can you destroy me?" Mark took a deep breath. His mind told him to back away, to play it safe, but something in his gut urged him forward. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he was certain of one thing: this would be an adventure he'd never forget. With a mischievous grin, Mark leaned forward. "I think I'm ready, but you might regret underestimating me." Her eyes glinted with something dangerous, but it wasn't the kind of danger that made him want to run. It was the kind of danger that made him want to rise to the challenge. "Well then, human," she said, her lips curving into a smile, "let the game begin." The moment the words left her lips, the air in the room shifted. Mark could feel it in his bones, a strange electricity that hummed between them, alive and buzzing. For a second he stood there, unsure of what to do next. He had never expected his night to take a turn like this, but now that it had, he wasn't about to back down. The alien, this beautiful, mysterious woman who had appeared out of nowhere, seemed to sense his hesitation. She crossed her arms and cocked her head to one side, watching him with a playful smirk. "Are you afraid, human?" she asked, her voice teasing, but there was something deeper in it, like a challenge wrapped in curiosity. Mark shook his head, his heart pounding. "Afraid? Nah," he said, though he could feel his palms start to sweat. "I'm just trying to figure out how to beat someone who looks like they could break me in half with a flick of a finger." The alien's smile grew. "You humans think too much," she said with a soft laugh. "It's not about strength, it's about will. The power to make someone question everything they know. Can you do that, human?" Mark's eyebrows furrowed. He wasn't sure exactly what she meant, but something about her words stirred something inside him. This wasn't just a test of physical power. It was something deeper, something about his ability to surprise her, to make her feel something she hadn't expected. "Well," Mark said, straightening his back and stepping closer to her, "if it's about will, I think I'm in the right place. I've got more than enough of that." Her violet eyes sparkled, but she didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked toward the center of the room, her long, silver hair swaying behind her like a shadow. "You'll have to prove it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You want to destroy me. Show me. But remember, I won't make it easy." Mark couldn't help but smile. This was the kind of challenge he thrived on. She might have been stronger, faster, and smarter, but he had something else, something humans did better than anyone else: heart, grit, and maybe a little bit of charm. He took a step forward, ready for whatever she had in mind. "All right, let's do this." With a sudden movement, the alien woman extended her hand, and a soft blue light flickered in the air around her. It wasn't a weapon, not exactly, but it was enough to make Mark stop in his tracks. The light swirled like liquid, moving in patterns he couldn't quite follow. "Tell me, human," she said, her voice softer now, almost hypnotic. "What are you willing to risk to break me, to destroy me?" Mark swallowed hard, his heart hammering. The question felt too heavy, too deep. It wasn't just about a physical challenge anymore. It was about something more vulnerable, something emotional. He thought about it for a moment before answering, the words coming more easily than he expected. "I'm willing to risk everything," Mark said, his voice steady. "Because that's what humans do. We risk, we love, we fall, we fail, but we always get back up." The alien woman's eyes softened, just for a moment. Then, with a swift movement, she shot the glowing light toward him. Mark barely had time to react before it hit him, and in that instant his whole world seemed to shift. He was no longer in his room. The walls seemed to melt away, and he was standing in a vast, dark expanse, surrounded by swirling colors and distant stars. It was like she had transported him into a completely different reality. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. "Nice trick," he muttered, "but it's gonna take more than that to break me." The alien woman's voice echoed in the void around him. "Let's see if you can still stand when you face your own fear." Before he could react, the scene around him changed. Now he was standing alone on a high cliff, looking down at a bottomless abyss. The wind whipped through his hair, and the sound of distant thunder rolled in the sky. His heart raced as he took a step back, feeling the sheer drop behind him. "Is this your fear?" the alien's voice whispered. "The fear of falling?" Mark's breath caught in his throat. He had never been afraid of heights, not really, but the sense of falling, of losing control, made his heart pound. He could feel it now, the cold edge of fear creeping into his mind. The abyss felt real, and for a moment he wasn't sure if he could stand on the edge anymore. But then something inside him clicked. He wasn't going to let this alien woman, or whatever she was, push him around. Not now, not ever. With a deep breath, Mark took a step forward, right to the edge of the cliff. His heart raced, but he didn't look down. Instead, he looked straight ahead, focusing on the stars above. "I'm not afraid," he said, his voice low but confident. "I don't run from challenges, I face them head-on." The world around him flickered, the abyss disappearing as the scene changed once more. Now they were back in the room, the alien standing before him with a look of surprise on her face. You didn't fall," she said softly, as if stunned. "Most would have, but you didn't." Mark grinned, his chest swelling with pride. "Did you really think I'd fall for that?" The alien's eyes narrowed, a strange emotion flickering behind her gaze. It wasn't anger, though, it was respect. "You have more will than I expected, human," she said. "Perhaps this game will be more interesting than I thought." Mark felt a spark of something more than just victory. It was the feeling of connecting with her, of showing her that humans weren't just easy to dismiss. There was strength in their hearts, and maybe, just maybe, there was something between them that went beyond just a challenge. "Well, if you're ready for more," Mark said, a playful grin tugging at his lips, "bring it on." And the alien smiled, her violet eyes gleaming. "I'll see how far you'll go, human. Let's find out just how much you can endure." The air between Mark and the alien woman crackled with an energy neither of them had expected. Their playful banter from earlier had shifted into something deeper, something unspoken yet understood. The challenge had become personal, and Mark realized that, despite the oddness of the situation, he didn't want to walk away from it. Not yet. Not with her. The alien woman, who, for the moment, Mark still didn't have a name for, was watching him intently. Her violet eyes glowed softly in the dim light of his room, the only real source of illumination now that the strange game they were playing had taken on a more surreal tone. She stepped closer, her gaze not leaving his. "You truly have more will than I anticipated, human," she said, her voice soft but laden with meaning. "Most beings would have succumbed to fear by now, but not you." Mark shrugged casually, though his heart was racing. "Guess we humans aren't as predictable as you thought." He grinned, hopping to keep the mood light, but there was something in the way she looked at him that made his stomach flip. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a step back and raised her hand, the air around her shimmering with the same glowing blue light as before. Mark tensed, wondering what new challenge she would throw at him. "This time," she said, her tone taking on an almost teasing edge, "we'll test your ability to withstand temptation." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Temptation? What do you mean by that?" Without answering, she snapped her fingers. In an instant, the room transformed. The walls seemed to dissolve, and they were no longer in his small, cozy room on the spaceship. Instead, they were standing in the middle of a lush, beautiful garden, bathed in the soft glow of 2 moons in the sky. The air smelled sweet, like flowers and earth, and the ground beneath their feet was soft grass. But it wasn't the setting that caught Mark's attention. It was the woman standing beside him, her figure bathed in the gentle moonlight. She was different now. Her appearance was more human, almost. The sharp edges of her alien form softened, and her eyes were still violet but warm and inviting, not the sharp, calculating look she had worn before. "You asked what I meant by temptation," she said, her voice low and quiet. "This is it. You have the chance to break me now, but not in the way you think." Mark looked around, confused. "I don't." Before he could finish, the alien woman was gone. One moment she was standing beside him, and the next she had disappeared into the garden. "Wait," Mark called out, his voice full of confusion. He instinctively took a step forward, but then something caught his eye, a figure standing in the distance. A woman. No, not just any woman. It was her, the alien, but she was different. She was wearing a soft, flowing dress that shimmered like the stars. She looked beautiful, more human than Mark had ever seen her before. His heart skipped a beat. This wasn't right. There was something about the way she looked now that made him ache. A strange pull tugged at him, and he felt an almost magnetic attraction, like every part of him was drawn to her. It was like he could feel her desire, her need for connection in the air between them. But he knew it wasn't real. This wasn't her, not really. It was a version of her that was designed to test him, to tempt him into falling for her in a way that would break him. And yet, even as his mind screamed at him to stay grounded, his heart told him something different. Wasn't that what humans did best? Fall in love. He couldn't help it. His feet moved before he could stop himself, and before he knew it, he was walking toward the vision of her, drawn like a moth to the flame. "Mark," her voice floated through the air, sweet and soft, pulling him closer. "Don't." Mark's voice was strained, as if the effort to resist was physical. He clenched his fists, trying to keep himself in check. "You're not real." "Am I not?" she asked, her voice so full of sweetness that it almost broke his resolve. "You think I'm just a test, but what if this is real, Mark? What if you could have me, everything you've ever wanted?" His mind was spinning. The version of her standing before him seemed so perfect, so vulnerable, like she needed him. His breath hitched and his hand twitched toward her, drawn by the undeniable pull. But then, in that moment, something clicked. Mark shook his head, fighting back the rush of emotions. This isn't her, he reminded himself. This is a test. With every ounce of willpower he could muster, Mark stopped himself. He took a deep breath and stepped back, the fog in his mind clearing. "No," he said firmly, his voice strong. "I won't fall for this. I'm not going to break just because you show me something I want. That's not who I am." The woman in front of him smiled, but there was a hint of respect in her gaze. Slowly she stepped back, her form shifting again, returning to her alien self. The garden faded and they were back in the room, the soft hum of the spaceship filling the silence. "You passed," she said, her tone softer now, more genuine. "You didn't fall for the temptation. You didn't let it break you." Mark let out a shaky breath, still processing everything. He felt a strange sense of relief wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by something else, something warm. He had done it. He had stayed true to himself. And in that moment, he realized that the real test wasn't about breaking her. It was about breaking himself open, about proving he could face his own desires and not let them control him. The alien woman walked toward him, her smile now full of admiration. "You are different than the others, stronger, more human." Mark smiled back, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. "I told you," he said, his voice light but sincere, "humans have a way of surprising people." The alien's gaze softened, and for the first time she looked at him not as a challenger, but as someone she wanted to understand. There was something real between them now, something beyond the game. And as they stood there, just a few feet apart, the unspoken bond between them grew, and Mark realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something unexpected. The air was still, the quiet hum of the spaceship a steady background to the tension between Mark and the alien woman. The playful challenge that had brought them together was no longer just a game. Something deeper had formed between them, something unspoken, but very much felt. The playful banter had faded into something more meaningful, something neither of them had anticipated. Mark stood there, his heart still racing from the test he'd just faced. The garden, the temptation, it had all felt so real, and for a moment he'd almost given in, almost fallen for the illusion she had created. But he hadn't. He had stood his ground, and that had meant something. The alien woman, now fully returned to her true form, studied him with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. Her violet eyes seemed to pierce straight through him, but there was no judgment in them, only something softer, something almost tender. "You didn't fall," she said, her voice low, almost in awe. "Most beings would have, but you're different." Mark let out a nervous laugh, wiping the back of his neck. "Guess I'm not as easy to trick as I look." The alien woman tilted her head, her gaze never leaving his. "It's not about tricking you, human. It's about understanding you. I thought I could break you, but now—" she hesitated, taking a small step forward. "Now I see something else." Mark's pulse quickened, his mouth suddenly dry. "What do you see?" She smiled softly, her lips curving in a way that made his chest tighten. "Strength, but also something more. Vulnerability. You didn't just resist. You chose not to fall for the illusion because you wanted something more, something real." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "I didn't think it would be easy," he said, taking a step toward her, his voice quieter now. "I don't want something fake. I want something real." Her smile deepened, but this time it wasn't playful or teasing. It was genuine, warm. It felt like an invitation. "You want to understand me, don't you?" Mark met her gaze. "I do. I mean you're not what I expected, but in a good way." He paused, unsure of how to put his thoughts into words. "You're not just some alien to me. I don't know what it is, but when I'm around you, everything feels different." The alien's expression softened, and she took another step forward, her presence overwhelming yet comforting. "And what if I told you that I feel the same way? That your human warmth is something I've never encountered before?" Her voice wavered slightly, betraying an emotion Mark couldn't quite name. Mark's heart swelled at her words. He hadn't expected this. He thought their interaction would stay playful, distant, maybe even absurd. But now it was something deeper, something real. He reached out hesitantly, unsure of what to do next. He wasn't sure how to touch her, how to bridge the gap between their worlds. But when his hand hovered just a few inches from her, she reached up and placed her fingers gently over his. The simple touch sent a jolt of electricity through Mark, his breath catching in his throat. "I never thought I would find this," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "A connection like this between us." Mark looked down at their hands, the warmth of her touch spreading through him. "You're not so different from me," he said quietly. "I think we're more alike than either of us expected." The alien woman's violet eyes shimmered in the low light, the intensity of her gaze stealing his breath away. "I never understood what it meant to feel something so deeply until now. Until you." Mark smiled, his heart racing in his chest. "Yeah, well, we humans don't always make sense, but I guess that's part of the charm." She laughed, a sound like music, light and carefree. "Yes, you are quite charming, human." For a moment they stood in the quiet, their hands still touching, their breaths shallow but in sync. It felt like time had slowed down, the space between them shrinking with every passing second. Mark's chest tightened, and for the first time in a long while he felt seen, not as a human being lost in the stars, but as someone who mattered, someone worth knowing. "You know," Mark said, breaking the silence, "this is probably the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, who meets an alien and ends up, well, like this." The alien woman tilted her head, her smile never fading. "It is strange," she agreed, her voice playful again. "But perhaps that's what makes it special. It was never meant to be easy." Mark grinned. "Yeah, I can tell, but I wouldn't want it any other way." She stepped a little closer, her eyes flickering with something he couldn't quite identify. "I'm not sure what this is or where it will go," she said softly, "but I know one thing, I don't want to let go of this feeling. Of you." Mark's breath caught in his throat. For the first time he realized how much he wanted the same thing. He didn't know what the future held, whether this was just a fleeting moment in space, a one-time adventure, or something that could last. But standing here, in this strange room with an alien who had surprised him more than he could ever have imagined, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready to walk away. I don't want to let go either, Mark whispered, his voice low, his heart pounding in his chest. The alien smiled, a soft, knowing smile, and stepped closer still, her body just inches from his. Then let's see where this journey takes us, human. And in that moment, Mark knew that no matter where it went, whether it was across galaxies or just a shared moment in time, it would be worth the ride. Together, they would face whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, they would find something neither of them expected: love. The quiet hum of the spaceship seemed louder now, more alive. It buzzed in Mark's chest, mixing with the pounding of his heart as he stood there, inches away from the alien woman who had already completely altered his world. Every moment they shared felt like it was charged with something electric, like the air itself had changed between them. He couldn't quite explain it, but every look, every word, every fleeting touch made him feel closer to her. Closer in a way that was undeniable. He wasn't sure how they had ended up here, standing in a room in the middle of space, but he knew that whatever was happening between them was more than just a fluke. There was something real, something that had settled deep inside him. The alien woman, who still had no name in Mark's mind, though he didn't know why that felt important, had stepped closer, so close that he could feel the heat of her body. Her violet eyes were locked on his, searching, almost as if she were trying to understand him in the same way he was trying to understand her. "You make me question everything I thought I knew," she said quietly, her voice like the softest of melodies. "Humans are unpredictable, wild, but there's something true about you, about us." Mark's breath caught in his throat. She had said it before, but now, in this moment, the meaning of her words hit him harder. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to say, but he knew he had to say something. "You're not so different from me," Mark replied, his voice steady but soft. "I think we're more alike than you think." Her smile deepened, and for the first time there was a flicker of something vulnerable in her expression. It was a fleeting thing, like she wasn't quite sure how to let it out. But it was there, and Mark noticed it. "I never thought I would meet someone like you," she said, her voice catching ever so slightly. "Someone who isn't just curious about me, but understands me. I've spent so long running from everything, from emotions, from connection. But with you, it's different." Mark stepped a little closer, his own heart tightening as he reached out a hand, carefully brushing his fingers against hers. It felt like he had been waiting forever to touch her this way, but the gentleness of the moment made him hesitate. He didn't want to rush anything. Not now, not when it felt so fragile, so precious. "I don't want you to run," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "Not from me, not from this." Her gaze softened, her hand turning so that their fingers were entwined. "I won't," she replied, her voice steady now like a promise. "I don't know what this is, but I don't want to run either." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment the silence was both comforting and overwhelming. It felt like the universe had stopped, like it was holding its breath for them. Mark didn't know where this strange journey with her was going, but standing here, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going anywhere. "Are we really doing this?" Mark asked, his voice shaking slightly with the rawness of the moment. "Are we really going to see where this goes, no matter what?" She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to gauge the truth of his words. Then, her lips parted in a smile that could have lit up a whole galaxy. "We are," she said, her voice full of quiet certainty. "We are human." Mark's chest swelled with emotion. She had said it so simply, but her words hit him like a wave. She trusted him. She believed in them. And maybe even more than that, she was ready. And for once, Mark realized that he was ready too, for whatever came next. He laughed softly, the sound bubbling out of him without thinking. "I guess I never expected any of this. I mean, who meets an alien and ends up here?" Her smile turned teasing. "You mean, who meets an alien and doesn't run away screaming?" "Exactly," Mark chuckled, shaking his head. "But then again, I guess I'm not really known for running." "No," she agreed, her tone light but with a hint of admiration. You're known for standing your ground and for surprising me every time." Mark felt the warmth of her words settle deep inside him. "I think that's why I'm still here, because you surprised me too." For a long moment they simply stood there, hand in hand, in the soft light of the room. It felt almost too perfect, too surreal, like this was the kind of thing that only happened in stories. But somehow they had found each other in the vastness of space, of all places. And that made the connection between them feel even more extraordinary. "You know, this could be insane," Mark said suddenly, his voice taking on a playful edge. "We could be like a cosmic disaster waiting to happen." She laughed, a rich, melodic sound that made his heart flutter. "We could be," she agreed. "But isn't that what makes it interesting?" Mark grinned, feeling the thrill of the unknown rushing through him. "Yeah, you're right. Who wants boring, predictable anyway?" The alien woman stepped a little closer, their bodies nearly touching now, her face tilted upward as if she was going to say something else. But instead of words, she closed the distance between them, pressing her lips gently against his. Mark's heart skipped a beat. For a moment time seemed to stand still. Her lips were soft, warm, and everything he had ever imagined but never thought he would find. The kiss was gentle, almost tentative, like they were both testing the waters. But the longer it lasted, the deeper it felt, until everything else in the universe faded away. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless, but neither of them moved away. Instead, they stood there, smiling at each other like they were the only two people in existence. "I think," Mark whispered, "we're in this together now." The alien woman's smile was soft but full of meaning. "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible, "together." And in that moment, Mark knew one thing for certain. No matter how strange, how unexpected, how wildly unpredictable this all was, he wouldn't change a thing. Because, for once, he had found something that was real, something worth fighting for. The days that followed felt like they were floating in a dream. Mark couldn't quite believe how quickly everything had changed. One minute, he was just another human aboard a spaceship, drifting through the stars, and the next, he was standing on the edge of something unexpected, something beautiful, something real. The alien woman, who for all his attempts still didn't have a name, was never far from his thoughts. In fact, she had taken over every moment of his day. He couldn't shake her smile, the way her eyes shimmered with that mysterious light whenever she looked at him. Every time their hands touched, it felt like a promise. A promise that no matter how different they were still somehow connected. And as the days passed, that connection only grew stronger. Mark found himself looking forward to the quiet moments he shared with her, the simple ones where they could just talk, laugh, and, occasionally, fall into comfortable silence. They didn't need words all the time. Their connection had become something more than just an adventure. It was something he couldn't quite name, but something that felt like home. One evening, after a long day of exploring the spaceship's hidden corners and learning about each other's worlds, they found themselves back in Mark's room. The soft hum of the ship outside was the only sound, as the stars outside the window twinkled brightly in the vastness of space. Mark leaned against the desk, his arms crossed, watching her as she paced back and forth, her eyes distant, deep in thought. He could tell there was something on her mind. "You've been quiet tonight," Mark said, his voice soft. "What's on your mind?" The alien woman stopped and turned to him, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart skip. "I've been thinking about everything, about how unexpected all of this is, how much I've changed since meeting you." Mark smiled. "I think we both have, but I'm glad we're here together." She walked toward him, her footsteps light, as if the very gravity of the ship couldn't keep her grounded. She stopped right in front of him, just close enough that he could feel the heat of her presence. Her hand reached out, her fingers gently tracing the outline of his jaw. "I've never felt like this before," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "So alive, so connected. Before I met you I was distant, detached from everything. But now I feel everything, Every moment, every touch, every look. Mark's heart swelled at her words. He reached out, taking her hand in his. That's the thing about us humans, I guess. We're all about feeling. It's messy and complicated and sometimes it hurts, but it's also what makes everything worth it. Her eyes softened and she nodded. I never understood that, but I'm beginning to. There was a long pause, a quiet understanding passing between them. In that silence, Mark could feel the weight of everything, every challenge they had faced, every laugh they had shared, and every moment of vulnerability that had brought them closer together. He was starting to realize that, despite the distance between their worlds, this was real. I think I'm starting to understand, too, Mark said, his voice low and sincere. You don't have to be alone to be strong. You don't have to hide who you are. She smiled, her lips curving into a soft, genuine expression that made his heart skip. I think that's the most human thing I've ever heard. Mark chuckled, his fingers still holding hers. Yeah, well, we humans have a way of surprising people. She leaned in closer, her breath warm against his face. The tension between them was palpable now, their hearts beating in sync as if they were one. The moment felt suspended in time, the universe itself holding its breath as they stood there, inches apart. I want to be with you, she whispered, her voice full of certainty. In this moment, in every moment. Mark's heart swelled, and without thinking he closed the space between them, pressing his lips gently against hers. The kiss was soft at first, almost tentative, but as they held each other it deepened, growing more urgent, more real. The world around them seemed to disappear, and for that brief moment nothing else existed except for the two of them together. When they finally pulled away, both of them breathless, Mark couldn't help but smile. I guess we're really doing this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She smiled back, her violet eyes shining with a mixture of affection and something deeper. Yes, we are. The ship continued to hum around them, the stars outside twinkling as brightly as ever. But in that moment, none of it mattered. The vastness of space seemed small compared to the connection they shared. For the first time, Mark realized that no matter where this journey took them, no matter how strange or unexpected it might be, they were in it together. He wasn't just a human wandering through space anymore. He had someone by his side, someone who made everything feel brighter, even in the darkest parts of the universe. I think we're ready for whatever comes next, Mark said softly, his hand still resting on hers. She nodded, her smile full of promise. Yes, whatever comes next, we'll face it together. And in that moment, Mark knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast and their journey was just starting. But with her by his side, he felt ready for anything. Together, they would face the unknown, hand in hand, heart in heart, wherever the stars took them. The days had become a blur of quiet moments and thrilling adventures. Mark and the alien woman, still nameless, though it didn't matter anymore, had settled into a rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like they were building something important together, something real, something that neither of them had expected. Mark had gotten used to seeing her face every day, her violet eyes sparkling with curiosity, her smile lighting up the room. Every time they laughed together, it felt like the weight of the galaxy shifted just a little bit. Their differences, once so stark, had become little more than fuel for the fire between them. She was everything he didn't understand, and yet everything that felt right. But the stars outside the window, always twinkling with mystery, reminded him that they were on a journey, and that journey was only beginning. It was late one evening, the ship's gentle hum lulling Mark into a sense of calm, when the alien woman found him in the observation deck. He had been staring out into the blackness of space, lost in thought, when he felt her presence behind him. "Can't sleep?" she asked, her voice as soft as the stars themselves. Mark turned, smiling. "I guess not, just thinking." "About what?" she asked, stepping closer. He motioned out to the vast emptiness beyond the glass. "About all of this, you, me, the universe." He let out a small chuckle. It's all kind of overwhelming." She moved to stand beside him, her gaze following the stars outside. "I think about it too," she said, her tone quiet. "How strange it is, how impossible it feels, but at the same time, how it feels like it was always meant to be." Mark looked at her, his heart skipping a beat. "I've been thinking the same thing, like what if this, us, was the reason we ended up on this ship in the first place?" Her eyes met his, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, standing in the infinite dark of space, understanding each other in a way that no one else could. "I never believed in fate," she whispered, "but maybe, just maybe this was." Mark reached out, his hand brushing hers. The simple touch sent a warmth through him that felt more powerful than any star. "I didn't believe in it either, but you know what? I'm starting to think fate isn't something we find, it's something we make." She smiled softly, her fingers intertwining with his. "I like that idea." For a moment they just stood there, holding hands, watching the stars in silence. The distance between their worlds didn't matter anymore. They weren't just a human and an alien anymore. They were two people who had found each other in the vastness of space, and that was enough. But then the soft, melodic voice of the ship's AI interrupted the quiet. "Captain, we are approaching the outer rim of the sector. We will need to make a course correction." Mark sighed, pulling back slightly but still holding her hand. "Well, looks like the adventure's not over yet." She raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "I thought you were starting to enjoy our little piece of peace and quiet." "I was," Mark admitted, grinning. "But you're right, the universe isn't going to wait for us." The alien woman gave him a knowing look, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "It's not just the universe you should be worried about. There are a lot of adventures waiting for us, and not all of them will be as calm as this." Mark's grin widened. "I think I'm ready for anything." She leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear. "We'll see, human, we'll see." Just as they were about to pull away from the window, the ship jolted slightly, the engines shifting into a new course. The sudden movement made Mark stumble slightly, but the alien woman caught him, her hand steadying him. "You okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I'm fine," Mark said with a smile, his hand still in hers. "Just not used to the wild ride yet." She laughed, her voice like music. "You'll get used to it." As the ship adjusted its path, Mark looked back out at the stars, feeling something deep inside him settle. He wasn't sure what the future held. The unknown stretched out before them, full of risks, dangers, and mysteries. But somehow, with her by his side, he felt ready to face it all. "I don't know what's out there," he said quietly, more to himself than to her, "but I know I don't want to face it alone." The alien woman squeezed his hand, her voice full of warmth. "You won't have to. I'm right here with you. And no matter what we face, we'll face it together." Mark smiled, the weight of her words settling deep into his chest. She was right. Together they could conquer anything. No matter the challenges or obstacles, they had already proven they were stronger together, and that was all he needed. "I'm glad you're here," he said softly, turning to her with a look full of meaning. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as we're together." She met his gaze, her eyes soft and full of affection. "We're already in this together, human, wherever the stars take us." And as the ship continued its journey into the unknown, Mark knew that, no matter where the universe led them, they would find their way. Together.